Hello everyone, Eid al-Fitr to our Muslim viewers. Thanks for joining us this half hour for the world today. Here's what's coming up on the program. Well, it is Eid today and President Bola Tinubu returns to the country to celebrate with other Muslim faithful. US President Donald Trump calls NATO allies cowards, saying it will be easy for them to help open the Strait of Hormuz. Plus, even though he's not been seen in public, Iranian TV plays back a previous footage of the new Ayatollah Khamenei. Let's begin the world today. Welcome to the program. It's Eid al-Fitr, a very significant Muslim festival marking the end of the 30-day Ramadan period, the Islamic holy month of fasting. And globally, it's a time of great celebration and feasting, beg your pardon. Muslims around the world coming together with family and friends to commemorate the completion of their fasting obligations. Here in Nigeria, Eid al-Fitr is a significant event with many people traveling back to their hometowns to celebrate with loved ones. Across different prayer grounds today, Muslims prayed for the unity of the country and restoration of peace in troubled regions in the north and southeast. President Bola Tinubu, who just returned from a state visit to the United Kingdom, was at Dodon Barracks hours after his arrival. The president also joined Muslim faithful at the prayer ground to observe the Eid prayers. Later on, he asked Nigerians to continue praying for peace in the country and also practice the preachings of the Holy Prophet. He says this period is one to share love and sacrifice.
These young ones walk onto the prayer ground, full of energy to join older ones gaily dressed for the 2026 Eid al-Fitr prayers, marking the end of Ramadan. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allah. President Bola Tinubu arrives at the Dodon Barracks prayer ground hours after he landed from the United Kingdom, accompanied by the National Security Advisor, Mr. Nuhu Ribadu, his Chief of Staff, Mr. Femi Gbajabiamila, the Deputy Governor of Lagos State, Mr. Kadri Hamzat, and other officials. They are all here for one purpose: to return gratitude to Allah for a successful fasting period.
Our interaction with people must be good. We ourselves, in terms of character, we must be a good person. And that's the whole essence of Ramadan.
We need to be patient and understand with the government that they are putting in their best and approaching the election season too. We need to be extra vigilant.
And basking in the success of his trip to the United Kingdom, the president admonishes Nigerians to love one another and support the efforts to reset the country.
We must continue to be our brother's keeper, good behavior, good neighbors, love to humanity, and kindness to all of us. And pray for peace in our country.
He also speaks on the need for religious tolerance.
Being able to accept one another as our brother's keeper. Tolerance among all faiths. The fact that we worship the same God means that our style might be different, our behavior may be different, but we say to God Almighty, it is one God.
Others believe that the country is on the right track and Nigerians should commit their leaders to prayers, always.
And my message is simply for Nigerians to remain united, to stay united in spite of the challenges that we have. And we must continue to preach unity amongst Nigerians, no matter where you're from, no matter your religion, no matter your creed. We must always stay together, and we must always pray for the country and pray for our leaders.
We need to love each other. We need to be transparent with each other. We are lucky Ramadan coincides with Lent, so we should show love to our neighbors and to everybody else.
Eid al-Fitr is a festival of breaking the fast, a 30-day dawn to sunset spiritual exercise. It celebrates the successful completion of all obligations, fosters unity, and emphasizes charity.
Well, pictures from earlier today, President Bola Tinubu arriving in Nigeria following his two-day state visit to the United Kingdom, where he and the First Lady met with King Charles III and Queen Camilla. They had dinner on Wednesday night, and then he went on to meet with the British Prime Minister Keir Starmer on Thursday, with whom he discussed areas of mutual interest. Nigeria's delegation to the United Kingdom returns with over 647 million pounds worth of deals signed between the two countries, said to be successful and to cover many areas, including the economy, education, immigration, and the likes. The focus, however, is on two major ports in Lagos, the Apapa port and the Tinkan Island port, which will be rehabilitated as a major part of the deal that was signed in the United Kingdom. We'll switch gears now to the United States, where President Donald Trump has called NATO allies cowards, saying it would be easy for them to help open the Strait of Hormuz. The U.S. president called out allies securing the vital shipping line last week, but said on Tuesday most had informed the U.S. they did not want to get involved in the war. Trump has been calling for major U.S. allies, none of which were consulted or advised on the war, to help secure the safety of shipping through the Iran-controlled Strait of Hormuz. The conflict has roiled global markets, killed thousands of people, displaced millions others since the U.S.-Israeli strike began on February 28th. President Trump has complained NATO countries do not want to join the fight against Iran, yet complain about high oil prices. In his words, now that fight is militarily won with very little danger for them. They complain about the high oil prices they are forced to pay, but don't want to help open the Strait of Hormuz, a simple military maneuver that is the single reason for the high oil prices. So easy for them to do with little risk, according to President Trump. And then he went on to write, cowards we will remember. Now, Germany, Britain, France, Italy, and the Netherlands, as well as Japan and Canada, have pledged in a joint statement to join appropriate efforts to ensure safe passage through the strait. But the German Chancellor Friedrich Merz made clear this presupposed an end to combat. President Trump, still speaking in the United States in Washington today, gave the U.S. a pat on the back regarding the war in Ukraine, referring to the U.S. saying that they've done extremely well in the region.
I want to begin by just saying we're doing extremely well in Iran. The difference between them and us is they had a Navy 2 weeks ago. They have no Navy anymore. It's all at the bottom of the sea. 58 ships knocked down in 2 days. And we have the greatest Navy anywhere in the world. It's not even close. But we are doing really well. We're not going to let them have nuclear weapons, because if they had them, they'd use them, and we're not going to let that happen. Should have been done a long time ago by other presidents.
Now, bolstered by the supposed U.S. win in Iran, President Trump said no one wants to become leader of the country.
I don't know what's happening. Their Navy's gone, their Air Force is gone, their anti-aircraft is all gone, it's all gone, their radar is all gone, their leaders are all gone, the next set of leaders are all gone, and the next set of leaders are mostly gone, and now nobody wants to be a leader over there anymore. We're having a hard time. We want to talk to them, and there's nobody to talk to. We have nobody to talk to, and you know what? We like it that way.
U.S. President Donald Trump. Well, the Iranian state television broadcast this footage on Thursday showing the new supreme leader, Mojtaba Khamenei, delivering a religious lecture to a group of students. The date and location of the footage could not be independently verified. Mojtaba has not made a live public appearance or address since taking office, fueling rumors regarding his condition. U.S. Secretary of War Pete Hegseth claimed Mojtaba was wounded in a strike and is likely disfigured. Meanwhile, President Trump says we do not know if he's dead. Iranian officials have rejected reports Mojtaba has been seriously harmed, with Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi insisting he's in excellent health and fully in control. It comes amid heightened regional tensions following joint military operations by the United States and Israel against Iran during ongoing diplomatic efforts aimed at curbing Tehran's nuclear and missile programs. Tehran has since launched retaliatory strikes targeting Israeli territory and U.S. military assets across the region, with explosions reported in several Gulf countries. And in the UK, an Iranian man has been arrested with a woman after trying to enter a Phase Lane naval base home to the UK's nuclear-armed submarines. Police Scotland said the 34-year-old man and 31-year-old woman were arrested at HM Naval Base Clyde at about 5 p.m. on Thursday. The woman's nationality is unknown, but it's understood she is not Iranian. The Royal Navy said the suspects unsuccessfully attempted to enter the base near Helensburgh in Argyll and Butte. A spokesperson says the matter is subject to an ongoing investigation. We will not comment further. It is understood the pair did not try to force their way into the base. They asked if they could enter, but were refused permission and were arrested shortly afterwards. Police Scotland said its inquiries are ongoing. Phase Lane is the home of all the Royal Navy's nuclear submarines, including the Vanguard-class ballistic missile submarines, which carry Trident nuclear missiles. Well, European leaders have been meeting over the last 2 days to discuss the ongoing conflict in Iran and the major implications it has for people across the continent. For more now, we're joined by the DW's Arthur Sullivan, who joins us from Berlin. Arthur, great to see you. What is the most obvious impact currently being felt in Europe as a result of the conflict?
Well, this conflict has been felt in Europe in many ways. There's been political pressure from the US on European governments to get involved. And then those same governments have obviously needed to get their citizens safely out of the Middle East in the region where necessary. So they're some of the most obvious ways, but perhaps the biggest impact so far has been economic, and particularly the issue of energy. So the surge in oil prices is obviously being felt in Europe as it is across the world. But then there's also the issue of gas. So on Thursday alone, European gas prices jumped by more than 35%, and that came after those Iranian missile strikes on the world's largest liquefied natural gas, or LNG, export plant in Qatar. And that, of course, came in response to Israeli attacks on Iranian energy infrastructure. So LNG from places such as Qatar has become very important to Europe since the war in Ukraine, because at that time it meant that the war in Ukraine led to Europe not buying Russian gas anymore. And so at that time, there was huge spikes in energy prices in Europe. And as a result of that experience, governments here in Europe are very sensitive to the risks of another protracted energy shock, the beginnings of which we may well be seeing with these attacks on energy infrastructure and the increases in prices. So at this meeting of EU leaders, discussions have been taking place on trying to come up with ways of limiting the impact of prolonged energy price increases on civilians. And then another issue that they've been doing some emergency contingency planning is on possible flows of migrants to Europe stemming from this crisis in the Middle East. And they've made it clear that they want to avoid what happened during 2015, when large numbers of refugees came to Europe during the war in Syria, a situation which dramatically upended the political climate here in Europe.
Well, interesting. Arthur, US President Donald Trump has been pressuring European and NATO allies to get involved in the conflict. What's the latest?
Well, the European leaders meeting in Brussels have made it clear that they have really no appetite to join this conflict. And we have heard some quite pointed criticism in interviews from the leaders of some of those countries. So countries like Austria, Belgium and Slovenia, their leaders talked this week about not wanting this war, having not been consulted. And that criticism follows some that came earlier in the week from the German Chancellor Friedrich Merz, who rode back on some of his previous support for the Israeli and US strikes to make it clear that Germany would not be participating in the conflict and that he had a lot of issues with the conflict as it was playing out. Now, yesterday, the US President Donald Trump did claim that, in his words, the NATO leaders were getting nicer about helping to defend and secure the pivotal Strait of Hormuz. But this is certainly not happening yet in terms of tangible support. So France, Germany, the Netherlands and Italy have released a statement saying that they would try and support, where appropriate, efforts to secure navigation at the Strait of Hormuz. But critically, those statements have indicated this would only happen once conditions are met. In other words, once the conflict has ended. So it's quite clear that any support from EU countries to secure freedom of navigation at the Strait will only happen when the actual conflict is over. So they're not going to be sending warships or sending any military personnel or equipment until that time.
And beyond the war in Iran, another conflict is the war in Ukraine. What's been the focus on discussions from EU leaders?
Yes, well, actually, this meeting of EU leaders was primarily focused on Ukraine because there was a major discussion on the issuing of a €90 billion loan that the EU has pledged to give to Ukraine to support it as it continues to fight off the now 4-year-long Russian invasion. But the loan has not been agreed, and that's due to resistance specifically from two EU members who have long been supporters of Moscow. That's Hungary and Slovakia, with Hungary in particular quite a strong supporter and which has quite friendly, close ties with Vladimir Putin and the Kremlin. Now, Hungary wants to resume oil imports from Russia via a pipeline which has not delivered any oil since January. And the reason for that, apparently, is that it's damaged. Now, Hungary says Ukraine is responsible in some form for this, that it's perhaps willing to keep it damaged. Ukraine says that the pipeline was damaged by Russian strikes. Either way, the pipeline is not delivering oil, and because of that, Hungary has not supported the issuing of this loan to Ukraine. Now, the EU says it will get the money to Ukraine one way or another, but the veto means that it's going to have to wait for quite a while, and indeed the use of the veto by Hungary has exposed just the extent of those divisions between those countries and the rest of the EU. The German Chancellor Friedrich Merz called the use of the veto by the Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban, quote, an act of serious disloyalty. And that really is strong language between two countries within the EU, and it's a good indication of just how big the division is when it comes to the issue of Ukraine between the vast majority of member states and those who are a little bit more sympathetic to the position of Moscow and who indeed critically want to import Russian oil and perhaps Russian gas.
Thank you so much, Arthur. The DW's Arthur Sullivan from Berlin. Thank you for joining us on the program. Well, we're wrapping things up now on the world today. The streets of Belgaum in southwest India's Karnataka transforms into a sea of colors. Those are just women, by the way, not men, mainly women on bikes, and they're wearing saris. But look at that when we return. Stay with us. Welcome back to the world today. The Republic of Ghana plans to introduce a historic resolution before the United Nations General Assembly in the coming weeks, aimed at classifying the transatlantic slave trade as the gravest crime in human history and establish international legal frameworks for reparations to Africa. Phyllis Kweku Ofosu, Ghana's Minister of State for Government Communication, spoke in Accra on Monday, stated the move was decades in making, with President Mahama aiming to elevate the issue globally to secure justice and reparations.
Reparation and restitutional justice for Africans has been on the cards for decades. It is something that has been pushed for many years. But President Mahama believes that the time has come to take it a notch higher and bring it to global attention and take steps that record the sufferings of Africans under the slave trade with certainty and accuracy, and push for some form of justice to be done in the matter. Because to have a situation where the best and brightest Africans, the strongest Africans, were abducted and carted away in ships in millions, and many of whom perished on their way, only to be taken to plantations and other horrific environments to work.
And we are back here. It's the all-female motorcycle rally celebrating Gudi Padwa, the Maharashtra New Year in India. This all happened yesterday. The streets of Belgaum in Karnataka transforming into a vibrant sea of color with thousands of those women participating. The spectacular tradition, or female empowerment, shows women in bikes, blending cultural heritage with modern empowerment. It's become a defining feature of the festival in recent years. So we're looking at more than 3,000 participants right now, adorned in traditional Navari saris in bright yellow, green and red, wearing floral hair ornaments and vibrant saffron turbans. They rode through the city streets on motorcycles. This year's all-female bike rally was believed to be the first of its kind held in Belgaum. They all seem so excited. Thanks for watching The World Today. I'm Amarachi Ubani.